Karoline Leavitt shakes up Whoopi Goldberg on The View during a live broadcast, and her comeback is wild. I could sense it already. The buzz of anticipation, the low hum of organized madness, that quiet spark in a space where everyone figured they had the next hour all mapped out. The studio lights flickered softly overhead, their warm glow spilling across the set where Whoopi Goldberg, the iconic talk show queen and debate pro, sat like she owned the place. She looked chill, flipping through her notes with one hand, sipping her coffee with the other. She didn't even need those notes. She'd done this gig 1,000,000 times, maybe more, and figured today was just another slam dunk. I messed with the mic clipped to my blazer, soaking in the vibe from the green room just off stage. The show had its own pulse, camera guys tweaking gear at the last second, producers whispering into headsets, the crowd settling in, some already glued to their screens. It was the usual flow of a live debate show, but today, that flow was about to hit a wall. They'd warned me before I even walked in. Karoline, it's a setup. They're fishing for a clip, not a real talk. They'll cut you off before you can even finish a thought. I'd heard it all before. I knew their playbook inside out, and I wasn't here to flop. Across the studio, Melissa Grant and Jonathan Reed, Whoopi's co-hosts, were kicking back, chatting like it was no big deal. They were relaxed, cocky even. They'd seen this script play out plenty of times. In their heads, it was already over. Another conservative guest, another quick win, same old story. I took the last sip of my water, let out a slow breath, and set the bottle aside. The mic wire pressed lightly against my collarbone, and I could feel the faint heat of the stage lights even from where I stood. I smoothed my blazer, eyes on the countdown clock ticking down. 10 seconds, 9. The lights dipped a bit. 8. The theme song kicked in, filling the room. 7. The crowd started buzzing, hyped up. 6. Whoopi leaned in, flashing that rehearsed grin. 5. The teleprompters blinked on. 4. I took a deep breath, loosening my shoulders. 3. Melissa straightened up, ready to jump in. 2. Jonathan smirked, arms crossed tight. 1. Cameras were live, and it was go time. The second they said my name, I felt it. A tiny shift in the air, subtle but real. This was what they'd been waiting for. I stepped out, keeping it smooth and steady, my heels tapping lightly on the floor as I headed to my seat. The audience's hum faded behind me. Across the table, Whoopi Goldberg tilted forward just a touch, her smile sharp but not quite warm. She was locked in. She'd played this game forever, inviting guests onto her turf, reeling them in, then tearing them down before they even clocked it. This was her gig, her rules, and she thought today would be business as usual. I slid into my chair, adjusted my mic, and scanned the room. The set glowed with soft, friendly vibes, all set up to make it feel like a casual chat. But I wasn't fooled. This wasn't a talk, it was a trap. Whoopi didn't waste a second. "Karoline," she started, her voice cool and even, the kind you use when you're dropping a line that's not really up for debate. "Let's keep it real. Conservative media's been pushing a ton of shaky info. How do you back that up?" It was a slick move, broad, loaded, meant to throw me off balance right out the gate and make me scramble to defend myself before we even got rolling. The crowd jumped in on cue, clapping, nodding along. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Melissa Grant shifting, crossing her legs with a little smirk, while Jonathan Reed leaned back, looking smug already. They thought they had this in the bag. I let the noise die down before I answered, no rush. I tilted my head just a bit, letting the quiet hang a little longer than they liked. Then I smiled. "Here's the real question," I said, keeping my tone steady and clear. "Who gets to say what's shaky info and what's not?" The room twitched, not in some big obvious way the cameras could catch, but I felt it hit. A couple of people in the crowd paused mid-clap. Melissa flicked her eyes toward Whoopi, something quick and unreadable crossing her face. This wasn't how they pictured it going. Whoopi's smile didn't budge, but I clocked how her fingers tightened just a bit on the table. "Oh, come on," she laughed, brushing it off with a wave of her hand. "We double-check everything here," Whoopi said. "We're not the ones spreading junk info." I watched her for a quick beat, then, just loud enough for the mic to pick up, I went, "Really?" One word, but it landed. Whoopi's fingers pressed a little harder against the table, a tiny flash of annoyance slipping across her face before she brushed it off. I leaned in a bit, dropping my voice to sharpen the moment, because I can think of a couple times that's not totally accurate. It was subtle, but the vibe shifted. Some folks in the crowd fidgeted in their seats, Melissa's smirk wobbled, and Jonathan flicked his eyes toward the control booth. Just like that, the room felt different. Whoopi bounced back fast, letting out a quick, sharp laugh as she shook her head. "Oh, come on," she said, waving her hand again. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. Conservatives love acting like they're the underdog." A few people clapped, but it wasn't as loud as before, she noticed. I let her words hang there for a sec before easing back in my chair, keeping my face neutral. "That's funny," I said. She blinked. I kept my tone light, almost like we were just chatting. "'Cause for someone who says conservatives don't get shut down, you seem pretty worked up that I'm even talking." The quiet that hit wasn't instant, but it was real. Whoopi's lips parted like she was about to fire back, but she paused, first time she'd hesitated. Melissa shifted in her seat. Jonathan's smirk vanished, and I knew right then I'd flipped the playbook. The moment stretched, not long enough for the cameras to make a big deal of it, but I felt it. That little hiccup in Whoopi's reaction, the quick, unsure look in her eyes, the way Melissa's smirk tightened up, how Jonathan sat up straighter, his arms not so chill anymore. The crowd wasn't laughing like they were supposed to, and Whoopi clocked it. She let out a sharp breath, shaking her head with a big, fake chuckle. "Oh, Karoline," she said, her voice thick with a know-it-all vibe. "You act like conservatives are the only ones who ever get pushback." There it was, her reset move trying to paint me as dramatic, dodge the real point, and nudge me into defending myself. I didn't bite. Instead, I rested my hands on the table, tilting my head a little. "I never said that," I replied, keeping it steady. "I said your kind of pushback looks a lot like trying to quiet people down." Whoopi's jaw ticked for a split second. I kept going. "When someone doesn't agree with you," I said, "they're not just off. They're tagged as risky or clueless or a problem for everybody." Quiet hit again. The audience was actually listening now. That was the real issue. Whoopi's fingers tapped the table lightly, a nervous habit. Melissa had her arms crossed now, not so laid back anymore. Jonathan glanced at the producers like he was wondering if they'd call a break. Whoopi leaned in, eyes narrowing a bit. "Karoline, let's not act like conservative media hasn't spent years pumping this country full of fear and spin," she said. "The mess your side's made, it's off the charts." Classic move, grabbing the high ground. The crowd clapped, but I noticed it wasn't as hyped up this time, not as sure. The convo's energy had shifted, and Whoopi wasn't steering it anymore. I let the applause fade, then smiled softly. "That's funny," I said. Whoopi blinked. "What's funny?" I leaned in just a touch. "That you talk about junk info like it's only coming from one direction." There it was again, that flicker of doubt in her eyes. I kept it rolling. "You say conservatives push fear," I went on, my voice calm and even. "But what about the stuff your network's been running with the past few years?" Melissa tensed up. Jonathan suddenly got real focused on his notes. Whoopi's jaw tightened. I waited. She let out a short laugh, but it didn't have the same punch. "Oh, please," she said, waving her hand like it was nothing. "We check everything on this show. We don't peddle fake stories." I tilted my head. "You don't?" Her next chuckle sounded forced, and I could see her shoulders getting stiff. This wasn't going how she planned. The audience picked up on it too. Some shifted around, a few swapped looks. The ones who'd been clapping hard earlier now seemed unsure. Whoopi leaned forward, her voice getting an edge. "Karoline," she said, "people like you are why this country's so split. You keep selling this fake, we're the victim story while shutting down anyone who doesn't buy it." There it was. She was scrambling now, not debating, just swinging. That meant I was ahead. I let the moment hang just long enough to make it stick. I let the quiet sit there, heavy enough for everyone to feel it, then flashed a little smile. "You know, Whoopi," I said, keeping my voice easy, almost like we were just catching up. "For someone who says conservatives don't get silenced, you're looking pretty rattled that I'm even talking." Bam! The room flipped. Whoopi let out a quick breath through her nose, her fingers pressing a bit against the table. "Oh, come on," she mumbled. But the laugh was gone, and nobody else was cracking up either. Jonathan cleared his throat, jumping in with a forced chuckle. "I think what Whoopi's trying to say is, there's a difference between disagreeing and—" I slid my eyes over to him. "You mean between disagreeing and getting shut down?" I cut in, smooth as butter. He blinked. I tilted my head. Tell me, Jonathan, I said, when's the last time someone sat here and pushed back on your take without getting drowned out? Dead quiet hit. Not the kind that means a break's coming or the convo's shifting, but the kind that shakes things loose. Melissa fidgeted. Jonathan didn't say a word. Whoopi locked eyes with me, her face blank, like she was holding it together on purpose. I leaned back in my chair, watching them, waiting. Then, just loud enough for the mics to catch, I said, "Yeah, that's what I figured." Whoopi let out a sharp huff. "Oh, please," she scoffed, shaking her head. "This isn't about silencing anybody. It's about owning up." "Is it?" I asked. Her mouth opened, but I didn't stop. "'Cause to me," I said, keeping my tone light but sharp, "it looks like what really gets under your skin isn't bad info." I let that hang for a beat. It's people pushing back. And that was it. The moment Whoopi realized she wasn't running the show anymore. The moment Melissa quit trying to butt in. The moment Jonathan's cool guy vibe cracked just a little. The crowd went silent. 'Cause in live debates, you can tweak the story later, spin the clips, pick what fits. But right there, right then, the real deal shines through. And the real deal was Whoopi Goldberg, the queen of steering every chat on this stage for years, had just lost her grip. She felt it. I saw it. And she didn't like it one bit. She rolled her shoulders back, breathing slow. "Karoline," she said, forcing a tight smile. "Say what you want, but facts are facts." I smiled back. "They are?" Then I leaned in, voice steady as a rock. "So how about we dig into them?" Whoopi's fingers tightened on the table. Melissa wasn't smirking anymore. Jonathan kept eyeing the producers, waiting for some kind of lifeline to pull them out of this mess. But there was no pulling out. The power had shifted, and for once, Whoopi Goldberg wasn't the one holding it. Her fingers pressed harder against the table. That polished front of her is starting to slip. She wasn't used to this. Not here, not on her turf. For years, she'd been the one guiding talks, nudging debates, cutting folks off before they could build steam. Now, that moment wasn't hers anymore. I could see it. The way her shoulders got stiff, her jaw locking up, the quick look she shot the producers, like she was begging for a commercial break. But they couldn't jump in yet. I wasn't done. She huffed, shaking her head. "Karoline," she said, her voice dripping with fake calm. "This isn't about shutting anybody down. It's about what's real." I tilted my head a little. "Is it?" A tiny flicker of doubt flashed in her eyes, but I caught it. I leaned in just a bit, lowering my voice enough to draw the whole room in. "Tell me, Whoopi," I said, cool and steady. "When's the last time a conservative sat here and didn't get cut off, laughed at, or called a problem for everybody?" The silence grew, not all at once, but steady. I watched it sink in. Audience folks shifting in their seats, looking uneasy, even Melissa and Jonathan swapping quick, nervous glances. They knew what I was up to, and they knew I wasn't off base. Whoopi breathed out through her nose, shaking her head as she pushed out a weak laugh. "Oh, please," she muttered. "That's not how this goes." But nobody laughed with her. The crowd, her crowd, wasn't vibing like usual, and she could tell. The moment was slipping away, live on air, where no edits or spin could patch it up. Melissa tried to jump in. "I think what Whoopi means is..." I didn't let her finish. I turned to her, face blank. "Melissa," I said, still calm, "do you think this show's been straight up fair to conservative guests?" She froze. That split-second pause was all I needed. I tilted my head a little. Yes or no? She swallowed hard, unsure how to answer. Melissa opened her mouth, then shut it again. She didn't answer, couldn't. And right then, the shift hit hard. The audience saw it, the co-hosts felt it, and Whoopi, she watched it all slip away. I turned back to her. "You keep bringing up accountability," I said. "So let's get into it." I paused, letting the words settle heavy. "You claim conservatives don't get silenced, that this show's all about fair talks." I leaned in a little. "So why does it feel like anyone who pushes back gets laughed at instead of heard?" A thick silence stretched out. Whoopi's fingers tightened on the table. Melissa's face went blank. Jonathan's smirk was history. The crowd held its breath. This wasn't just another chat anymore. It was something bigger, a wake-up call. Whoopi finally huffed, patience wearing thin. "Oh, come on," she scoffed, rolling her eyes. "You're just ticked that conservatives are getting called out for their spin." There it was, her cool slipping into a defensive snap, more emotion than strategy. She knew it, I knew it, and the audience totally picked up on it. I stayed chill for a sec, letting her words float, then smiled. Called out, I echoed, keeping it light. I let that sit, then leaned in with a smooth, sharp hit. No, Whoopi, I said, pausing for effect. What conservatives don't like is getting drowned out, talked over, and tagged as trouble just for seeing things different from you. Boom. Whoopi's face locked up. The crowd caught its breath. Melissa and Jonathan swapped quick looks, unsure if they should jump in or let this train wreck roll. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every guest who'd been set up, every convo twisted, every story shaped to prop up one side. And now, for once, the audience was peeking behind the curtain. Whoopi let out a quick breath, shaking her head. Oh, please, she muttered again, quieter, less steady. This is silly. But she didn't push back with anything solid. She didn't have it. I could see her brain spinning, scrambling for a way to bounce back, but the hit had landed. I eased back a bit, tilting my head. Tell me, Whoopi, I said, voice light, almost playful. When's the last time someone sat here and got a full thought out without you cutting them off? She froze, just for a half second, but it was enough. That tiny pause broke the whole act wide open. The crowd wasn't laughing, the co-hosts weren't stepping up, and Whoopi just stared, fingers gripping the table, realizing live on air she'd lost the wheel. She sucked in a breath, let it out, then did something nobody saw coming. She yanked off her mic and stood up. The audience gasped. She muttered something low to the producers and walked off without another word. I didn't budge, didn't grin, didn't cheer. I just sat there, watching the weight of it all sink into the studio. Melissa and Jonathan swapped panicked looks, fumbling to patch things up, but it was way too late. The second Whoopi bailed, this wasn't just a segment, it was a moment, and the ripple was already spreading. For the first time in forever, Whoopi Goldberg had nothing left to say. The silence hung thick, choking the room. The audience locked up. The co-hosts froze. Even the camera crew didn't know where to point. Nobody thought Whoopi'd ditch her own show. I watched her vanish off stage, her mic still sitting where she'd dropped it. Melissa Grant and Jonathan Reed, her trusty sidekicks, were thrown. Jonathan coughed, threw out a weak laugh, then glanced at the producers like, "What now?" Melissa, still clutching her cue cards, cleared her throat and tried to grin. "Well," she said, her voice shaky, "that was a curveball." A couple folks in the crowd chuckled faintly. Damage control was kicking in, but it wasn't going to stick. I tweaked my mic a little, resting my hands on the table. No smirking, no gloating. I didn't need to. The moment said it all. And the internet, it was already blowing up. Before the producers could even flip to a break, before anyone could tame the chaos, the clip was out there. Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook. In 7 minutes flat, it was the top trending video nationwide, hashtags popping off left and right. The internet lit up fast. Hashtag Whoopi storms out, hashtag Karoline unfiltered, hashtag Whoopi can't debate trending everywhere. People jumped on it right away. She just proved Karoline's point, bolted the second she wasn't in charge. This wasn't just a debate anymore. It was the media getting caught with its pants down, live. Even die-hard fans of the show were rattled. If Whoopi had a solid comeback, she wouldn't have dipped, they said. Fox News, The Daily Wire, and Newsmax looped the clip nonstop, dubbing it the Round Table's epic crash. CNN and MSNBC tried to shrug it off as just a tense moment, but nobody online was buying that. The video didn't need spin. Millions saw it go down with their own eyes. And Whoopi! She hadn't shown her face on air since. Behind the scenes, ABC execs were freaking out. Sponsors got jittery, and leaks spilled the chaos. One producer, staying nameless, admitted the screw-up. "We thought Karoline would be a pushover. We totally misjudged her, and now we're toast." The fallout was snowballing. Big advertisers started bailing quietly. The show's social media went dark, and then the memes hit. Within 12 hours, Whoopi's face was plastered across every platform. "When you realize you stepped into quicksand," one captioned her stunned look. Another gif of her walking off got tagged, "Whoopi thinking she'd coast through a conservative guest." Late-night hosts jumped in. Jimmy Fallon replayed it, cracking, "I haven't seen an exit that quick since my buddy caught me swiping on dating apps." TikTok comics reenacted the whole thing, racking up millions of views. But the real kicker? It didn't come from Whoopi or the network, it came from me. I didn't rant or clap back, didn't need to. I just retweeted the viral clip with one line. "I thought this was a debate." Boom, the internet lost it. Millions of likes, tons of shares, news folks quoting it live. That short, chill tweet hit harder than anything Whoopi's crew could patch up. I didn't go after her personally. I let the moment do the talking, and that's what stung her the most. While the round table scrambled to flip the story, I was already past it. By morning, ABC's damage control was in overdrive. They dropped a statement trying to smooth things over. Our show's always been about different viewpoints, but yesterday's chat got a little heated. Nobody bit. Raw footage was everywhere. Impossible to twist. Millions had seen it unfiltered, and the network's weak excuse just made it worse. Meanwhile, conservative outlets kept the heat on. Fox News ran the clip with Whoopi Goldberg bails on the round table after Karoline Leavitt exposes double standards. The Daily Wire went with watch Whoopi flinch when Karoline drops truth, walks off live. Newsmax even got a body language pro to break it down. That wasn't just annoyance. She knew she was losing and needed out. For 24 hours, that clip was everywhere, picked apart frame by frame. Analysts zooming in on every twitch in Whoopi's face. Mainstream media fought back. CNN called it a spicy exchange blown up. MSNBC said Whoopi was standing firm against bad info. And the Washington Post dropped an op-ed slamming me, claiming I was just stirring the pot, not talking real issues. But it flopped. People just rewatched the clip and saw what went down. A week later, it had 35 million views, and Whoopi still hadn't surfaced. Word got out the execs were ticked at how she handled it. Sponsors started jumping ship, cash was draining, and one big-shot manager got caught saying, "We need a fix ASAP. Whoopi can't flake out like that again." They wanted her back to clean it up, but here's the hitch. Whoopi wasn't budging. No comments, no spin, nothing in the days after. Deep down, she knew it wouldn't fix this. It wasn't just a stumble or a weird exit. It was a moment that broke the mask. When it counted, I didn't walk away or dodge the convo. Whoopi did. No matter what they tried next, no matter how hard ABC pushed to rewrite it, they couldn't wipe that away.
This is an artistic and fictional creation intended for both entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to actual people or events is purely coincidental. Some scenes and dialogues in the video are part of a dramatized performance and incorporate elements of grotesque, satire, and exaggeration. The creator stands against discrimination, violence, and hatred. This channel fully complies with YouTube's policies and does not infringe upon copyright laws.